5 Power 5 coaching jobs already open through 5 weeks in the college football season. 2 of them in the same division, Wisconsin and Nebraska. Many expecting the Auburn job to open up soon as well, with Brian Harson's seat blazing hot. Along with those 2 Big Ten West programs, you've got Colorado and Arizona State open due to early season firings in the Pac-12. Also an opening in the ACC, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, who fired Jeff Collins. So let's get Tom Fornelli in here to play the role of the CBS Sports HQ search firm. Tom, you're going to give us a dream coaching scenario for these schools, along with a more realistic scenario for the 5 openings. And let's start with Wisconsin. This appears to be the most plug and play, but is that job actually going to open up, or is DC Jim Leonhard, who's the interim now, are they just going to end up giving it to him?
I think there's a chance that if Wisconsin falls flat on its face over the final month and a half of the season here, then yeah, they will open it up and they will conduct a search. And I think that they're going to be doing some background work just in case things go wrong. But I think everything behind the move to fire Paul Chryst at this point of the season was to set it up for Jim Leonhard to not only be the interim, but to earn the spot as a permanent role, because this is something that has kind of been in the works for a while. Jim Leonhard has had plenty of interest from other schools, including Big Ten teams, and he's kind of shrugged it off and said he wasn't interested. And he even had interest from the Green Bay Packers last year, who wanted him to be their defensive coordinator, and he turned that gig down. And the long prevailing thought has always been he's waiting for the Wisconsin job to come open. He wants to be the Wisconsin head coach. Now he has his chance, and I think part of the reason Wisconsin moved on from Chryst is that they were worried that maybe Jim Leonhard was going to get tired of waiting around for the job to come open, and they wanted to make the move and make it available for him. So I think everybody in Madison views Jim Leonhard as the dream candidate, and I think he's also the most realistic candidate. It makes sense because he played at Wisconsin. His defenses have been phenomenal there. They've been a big reason behind Wisconsin's success in recent years. And in the last couple seasons, when the offense has kind of fallen off from where it had been in recent years, the defense has still been the constant. So he knows the blueprint. He's been in the system. He's the one that's most likely to be able to maintain Wisconsin as for what it is as the Big Ten heads into a new era where USC and UCLA will be joining.
So he's the dream and the reality for Wisconsin if he can get that ship righted this season. Nebraska, on the other hand, they're going in a different direction. They think they're a coach away from going back in that time machine, back to the glory days of the 90s. What's a dream scenario for them?
Oh, I think if you ask Nebraska fans to be honest with you, because like you said, this is a program that has not had a lot of success in recent years, but they still view themselves as the program that was winning national titles under Tom Osborne, and they view themselves as a program that is a sleeping giant with the facilities, with the NIL support from boosters to once again compete for national titles. So they got to go get themselves a coach who can do that. So I think the dream candidate is Urban Meyer. I do not think that is going to happen. I think there are some concerns with Urban's, off the field track record in recent seasons. And I also wonder how interested Urban would be in the Nebraska job. So if that's not going to happen, I think the realistic candidate is somebody who used to work for Urban Meyer as his offensive coordinator at Florida when they were winning national titles. I think Dan Mullen is an excellent option for the Cornhuskers going forward. If we look at the success he had at Mississippi State, I think his time at Florida kind of clouds that, but it can't be understated how difficult of a job the Mississippi State gig is. And he turned it into one of the better programs, more consistent programs in the SEC West at a time when the SEC West has been the most difficult division in college football. And at Florida, the problem with Mullen was his recruiting. He did not approach it from the angle where he was going to be able to keep up with Georgia, and that rubbed boosters the wrong way. He's more of a developmental head coach. I think if you put him at Nebraska, where they have the boost support, the NIL support, and they put a staff around him of recruiters, I think they can get talent to Lincoln. And I think if you just let Dan Mullen do what he does best, which is coach the offense and coach his football team, I think he would be a great fit for the Cornhuskers and would once again have them be relevant in the Big Ten, which generally they have not been since making the move from the Big 12.
Yeah, I can't even get to a bowl game lately. We'll see what happens the rest of the way this season. That Big Ten West is totally up for grabs. So 2 schools there in the Big Ten West looking for a new head coach. 2 schools in the Pac-12 looking for a new head coach as well. Let's start with Arizona State. And this is kind of being viewed as maybe the job with the biggest upside, because of the potential there in the desert, in a great base to get people to come to.
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting job in that, as you mentioned, there's so much potential within this program because Arizona is a state that already has a pretty solid base of talent at the high school level, and that talent's actually improving and increasing because we've seen in recent years, if you look at population demographics, a lot of families from California have recently been making the move to Arizona. So you look at the long-term potential of this program as far as recruiting and high school football in the state. I think it's going to keep improving. Now, of course, there are some questions about where Arizona State will be playing football in the future. Will it remain in the Pac-12 or will it eventually join the Big 12, which, as our own Dennis Dodd has reported, has shown plenty of interest in the school? So that leaves some questions up in the air, which might impact its overall ability to find its coach. But I think your dream candidate, if you're Arizona State right now, is Mike Norvell. He was the offensive coordinator there for 4 years under Todd Graham, which is the last time Arizona State's football program was really anything good. Herm Edwards had a couple good seasons with the Sun Devils, but they never quite reached the Todd Graham levels. And I think also, after the last few years of watching Herm Edwards' team score 17 points a game, Arizona State fans would probably like to see somebody with an offensive background who could at least excite them and put points on the board, and Norvell obviously has that. Problem is, Norvell's not going to leave Florida State for Arizona State right now, so I think if I'm Arizona State, I need a fresh, young offensive mind, and I'm looking at Kenny Dillingham, who has moved around the country in recent years, has been part of some really good staffs. He's currently the offensive coordinator at Oregon. I think he would come into this job, and he's an Arizona native. He loves the school. He's, privately expressed to some people that this is one of his dream jobs. I think if Arizona State made the offer to Dillingham, he would take it, and I think he could do an excellent job there as a young coach just to bring some energy and excitement to a program that really needs it right now.
Another program that probably doesn't know right now if they're going to be in the Pac-12 or the Big 12, Colorado, a former Big 12 school. This is a program that is as down as any in the country. They may have the worst team in the entire country in your bottom 25 each and every week. What's a dream scenario for the Buffs?
Yeah, I think the dream scenario would be Chris Peterson, the former Boise State and Washington coach, because Peterson is familiar with the geographical area as far as recruiting and all that stuff from his time at Boise and from his time at Washington, where he also has experience within the Pac-12. It's just, I don't know if Peterson is even interested in getting back into coaching right now. And if he is, I would guess he's going to have better offers available to him than the Colorado job. So I don't think that this is something that they would be able to convince him to do. But if they could, I think it would be a home run grand slam. We've seen him take on kind of rebuild jobs at Washington before, and he got them to the college football playoff within his first few years there. I don't think he'd get Colorado to the playoff, but I do think he could get them back to bowl games regularly, which is something that has not been happening in Boulder. But I think a realistic candidate for them, which is a coach that has been in a similar situation, in fact, he was in a much tougher situation, the Alabama offensive coordinator, Bill O'Brien. He was the last head coach at the college level when he took over the Penn State job following the Joe Paterno, Jerry Sandusky scandal at the school that caused Penn State to be levied with NCAA penalties. It was in a very bad spot. He took over. He was able to right the ship a little bit and get it back sailing. They got to bowl games. They were heading in the right direction. He eventually left to go become the Houston Texans head coach. James Franklin took over, and Penn State's back to being Penn State now. I think Bill O'Brien is somebody who would be able to do a similar job in Colorado to where maybe they're not competing, like I said, for playoff berths or Pac-12 titles or Big 12 titles if that's where they end up. But it's a program that should be at least, at a minimum, competing for bowl games year in and year out. And I think Bill O'Brien would be able to do that. Maybe he would serve as something of a bridge coach until the next one to take him to the next level.
All right, let's move to the ACC opening right now, and it's Georgia Tech. And that's the one where we keep hearing Deion Sanders' name bandied about. Are you buying into that at all?
I understand why Georgia Tech would be interested in Deion Sanders, and I understand why so many people are connecting them because of Deion's history in the city of Atlanta as a player with the Falcons and with the Atlanta Braves. I just don't think he's the dream candidate for Georgia Tech because I don't think he makes sense at Georgia Tech. Deion, in his time at Jackson State, has proven he's an excellent recruiter. He's a guy that can bring attention to your program, and he's done a very good job. And he's proven to be a pretty good game day coach, too, as they're winning most of the time. It's just Georgia Tech is a different kind of job in that they have academic restrictions on who they can recruit. There's a reason why Georgia Tech's best years in recent memory were running the option under Paul Johnson. They are a developmental program that can only get certain players in. A lot of the top talent in that Atlanta area can't go to Georgia Tech. They're due to academic requirements. That's why Georgia is always going to be able to pull those guys more than Georgia Tech's, and also because, Georgia won a national title, so they're a bit more attractive. I look at Georgia Tech as a program that needs a developmental coach, a guy with that kind of track record. So I look at Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina to be the dream candidate for the Yellow Jackets. I mentioned Paul Johnson ran the option at Georgia Tech. They had their best years. They won Coastal divisions. They competed for ACC titles. Jamie Chadwell's offense at Coastal is not the triple option, but it's really not that different. It's just a much more modernized version of it with more passing elements and more RPOs. And I think if you bring him in, he will bring a lot of energy, a lot of excellent recruiting, and he can develop players and get them to fit into his system to have success in an ACC conference right now that outside of Clemson, let's be real, there's plenty of wiggle room to improve. It wouldn't be that hard of a sell job to me for Jamie Chadwell to turn this program around. So if I'm Georgia Tech, I understand Dion, but I think Jamie Chadwell is the much better option. He's my dream option, and he's realistic.
Jeez, look at that winning percentage, 90% over the last 3 seasons. Alabama, the only program that is winning at a better clip than the Chants. Tom Fornelli with us here on HQ. You can hear him on the Cover 3 podcast. Download and follow wherever you like to get your audio for all things college football.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.